Hello fellow sim racers, today I'm going to be taking a look at the Sebring mod track for Assetto Corsa. Sebring International Raceway should be familiar to anyone with at least a casual interest in either real-world motorsport or driving games. If road courses float your boat, then Sebring is among the best that the United States has to offer. But being situated in Florida means that Sebring was never likely to be on Kunos's rather Eurocentric radar. So bringing Sebring to Assetto Corsa has fallen to the modding community. Thankfully, a talented chap called DrM Boul, or DrM Boul, I've genuinely no idea which, has stepped up to the plate and produced what, for me at least, is a great representation of Sebring. For starters, the track mesh is incredibly detailed, which is somewhat critical for a track like Sebring. Like many great racing circuits, the raceway started life as a Second World War airfield, and after the cessation of hostilities, enterprising folk with 110 octane blood decided that driving cars around in circles would be both a good money spinner and a pleasant way to while away an afternoon. A familiar story, no doubt, but this historical aside is actually pretty important. The track layout is constructed from former taxiways, linked together by purpose-built track sections. This mixture of modern asphalt and aging concrete creates a characterful road course, or to put it quite bluntly, it's super bumpy. Now, I've never driven at Sebring, or even in the state of Florida for that matter, so I can't really comment on how close the track mesh is to reality, but I can tell you that it has that all-important elusive quality of, well, feeling right. If you watch a replay of the cars coming through the final corner, for example, the way they skip across the bumps looks very convincing indeed. And I know it's a bit of a weird comparison to make, but the track feels pretty close to the iRacing version in this respect as well. Moving on from the track mesh, the track side details are great, and this place definitely feels like Sebring to me. Some of the tyre barriers aren't quite right, and perhaps you could argue that there aren't nearly as many motorhomes in the infields as there should be, but these aren't really things you notice when you're immersed in the cockpit. Speaking of immersion, I have to say the AI works really well here. This is something that can be a bit hit and miss for mod tracks and, well, with Assetto Corsa in general. The AI does produce a pretty good race here in my opinion. I consider myself a pretty positive guy in general, and when I'm evaluating something that's been constructed as a labour of love by someone and donated to the community for free, I'm usually pretty keen to keep things positive. But there are a couple of minor areas which I think could see some improvement. First of all, there's a rather mountainous bump right on the apex of Le Mans Corner. It's not something that seems to be there on the iRacing laser scan, and I can't see it in video playback of real-world racing. Normally this sort of thing wouldn't really bother me, but it's a very significant bump in a very inconvenient place, and I do find it a little immersion breaking. If I'm being a little hypercritical, a few of the curves appear to be a little bit higher and or narrower than they are on the iRacing laser scan, but this doesn't really impact the racing in any meaningful way. One final point to note, some mod cars seem to have a bit of trouble if they hit the barrier on the outside of Sunset Turn. This isn't uncommon for mod cars on mod tracks, it has to be said. I don't know the reason for it, all I know is if you hit the barrier hard in certain mod cars, you'll end up in a nausea-inducing eternal flat spin. Not recommended in VR, I can tell you. There is a simple cure for this, of course. If you're using mod cars, just don't crash. So that's all very well and good, but what does this Sebring mod feel like to drive? Let's take a quick lap in the Orica LMPC car and find out. Turn 1 is a fast and bumpy affair. It's an iconic corner that dares you to push harder each time. The corner exits out of sight and the concrete surface ends without warning on the outside. Turn 2 is a flat-out kink that you can just ignore while you prepare to brake for the complex that is turns 3, 4 and 5. Brake hard for turn 3 and try to avoid the tall curb on the inside. Straighten the car up for turn 4 and prepare to brake again for the critical turn 5. Take a later apex than you think and get on the power as early as you can for the blast down towards the hairpin. The fast right-hander at turn 6 is named after the late Dan Gurney, and it doesn't really trouble modern race cars. The braking zone for the hairpin is super bumpy, and it's very easy to snatch a brake or slightly outbrake yourself as I have here. The cost of missing the apex by as little as a metre is that you have to wait for what feels like an eternity before you can get back on the power. The next section of the track is flat out through the aptly named Fangio turns before you bring the car back over to the left to brake down for the tricky turn 10. What looks like a simple 90-degree right-hander is deceptively challenging, both in the game and in real life. Getting a good exit is critical to getting good speed through the fast Collier corner. Try to brake in a straight line for Tower Turn, which is another deceptively tricky 90-degree right-hander. Get on the power as early as you can and don't put a wheel on the dirt. The back of the curve face is not your friend here. As you can see, I was rather cautious on this lap. Bishop Bend is flat out in a modern race car, and it's important to keep a good line through here to prepare you for the braking zone for turn 15. This corner wills you to go in hot, but that puts you offline for the all-important Le Mans corner. Position the car over on the outside of the curb and aim towards the apex. On this version of the track, I found that the bump on the apex encourages you to give it a bit of a wide berth in low ride height cars like this. Whatever line you take, it's all about maximising exit speed for the long run down to the final corner. Turn 17 is called Sunset Bend and embodies everything that's great about Sebring. You have to brake hard while negotiating vicious bumps and turning through this tightening right-hander. It's tricky, it's technical, it's a little scary, and having an AI car to your outside doesn't really improve matters. We check the mirrors to make sure our computer friend isn't going to do something stupid and guide our rather fun LMPC car across the start-finish line to complete the lap. So, that's what Sebring looks like from on board an Oreca Le Mans prototype challenge car. And it has to be said, this circuit is really suited to both the LMPC cars and the Daytona prototypes that are featured in this video. Add that to Assetto Corsa's decent selection of GTLM and GTD cars, and you've got a really good excuse to have some fun with some varied multi-class racing. If you're a motorsports fan, I probably don't need to convince you to go and download this Sebring mod, but if you're more of a casual gamer that's perhaps not as enamoured with this place as I am, then I think Sebring's biggest selling point is that it's just very different to all of the European tracks that are featured in Assetto Corsa. In my totally biased layman opinion, I think this mod is fantastic and it makes a great addition to Assetto Corsa. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then it'd be great if you could hit the like button, and if for some reason you want to see more of my content, then please subscribe to my channel. As always, thank you for donating your precious free time to watching this sim racing video. It is very much appreciated. So all that's left to say is goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day.